You know, there's 8mm, there's Super 8, there's double Super 8, there's 16, there's Super 16, 35, Super 35, IMAX. There's CMOS and CCD. There's Fisher-Price Pixel Vision. There's HD, HDV, Mini DV, DV Cam. There's VHS and Beta. There's Betacam, there's Betacam SX, and there's Digibeta, but it's all basically the same thing. It's light, a handsome dude, a lens, with an openy-closey aperture in it, a camera with a shutter that opens and closes, whippy-skippy, a gabillion and a half times a second, and film or video stock, which takes the light that comes from the sun, that bounces off your handsome dude, goes through the lens with its openy-closey aperture, through the whippy-skippy, a gabillion and a half times a second shutter, and eventually crashes into a pile of silver halide crystals in emulsion or a magnetizable piece of plastic, and eventually, farther on down the line, magically becomes an image. But all of that knowledge and $1 will buy you a shitty cup of coffee, because everything I've described so far is a mathematical equation where all of the variables, the sun, the aperture, the shutter, and the film stock are just that, variable. And the only thing you won't know in advance is what you want the end result to be. In this case, a well-exposed image of a handsome young man. So how do we get from here to there? Well, as with anything that's complicated and technical and theoretical, I find it's easiest to understand by imagining a metaphorical bucket. The bucket in this case is your film stock, or the sensor inside your video camera. It can be an ISO 800 speed bucket. It can be the sensor in the camera with the gain set to 0, 6, or 3 decibels. It doesn't really matter, because all you're changing when you change those things is the amount of photons that you're going to need to create a properly exposed image. And in this case, it's 5 photons. The next thing is the shutter, which opens and closes whippy-skippy a gabillion and a half times a second, alternately allowing and preventing light from passing through. And it can do that in a 60th of a second or a 500th of a second, or in however long that is. Now, assuming you're not shooting a movie with a pinhole camera, your camera's going to have a lens hanging off the front. And all math aside, lenses do 2 jobs. They focus the light coming in onto the film, and they control the amount of it that passes through with the aperture, which is a fancy word for hole. It can be a big one, wide open, like f1.4, or closed down and small, like f22, or average and right in the middle, like f8. Now this is no bucket. This is a Panaflex, or an Aeroflex, or a Bolex, or an Agfa Movex. It's a Krasnogorsk or a Bolia. It's Zapruder's Bell & Howell Zoomatic, and it's Michael Mann's Viper Filmstream HD Cam from Miami Vice and Collateral. It's film or video, shutter, and an aperture. And all that we need to create a properly exposed image is photons. Of course, there's more to taking a good-looking picture than just getting the exposure right. Changing the speed of your film stock, or the angle or speed of your shutter, or the gain on your video camera will affect the quality of your final image. And changing the aperture in your lens will affect focus and depth of field. And assuming that you're not using a box full of plastic balls as your light source, you're going to be able to control that as well. Taking a good picture is as complicated as you want to make it. But in every camera ever since the beginning of time, since cameras were invented thousands of years ago by a guy on Wikipedia, they've all been basically the same thing. Film or video, shutter, aperture, a handsome fellow, and a light source. Now stay tuned for our next video, which will be on fixing an underexposed image in post, because I'm not doing the ball drop thing again.